Welcome, everybody. Delighted to have y'all here. I'm Greg Dale, the CEO of Tech for Campaigns, and joined by many TFC staff and volunteers and illustrious elected representative guests. But very excited to welcome all to the all hands tonight for our post-election briefing. It was quite the election, especially for the folks and things that we all care about here at Tech for Campaigns. So from an agenda, we'll take a bit of a victory lap, kind of look at some of the trends, what we saw from the perspective of our two major programs that we had in the field during this year, and then talk to Representative Jay Moore and Representative elect Jen Hill from Michigan, and then celebrate at the end some of our volunteers that have hit amazing milestones. So in the area of obviously a lot of awesome things happened, better than expected, but especially for us that have cared about state legislatures and statewide offices for so long, it was a particularly resonant and sweet night. In Michigan, had tremendous wins up and down the ballot, including State House and State Senate. Minnesota flipped the State Senate, so there's a trifecta there. Pennsylvania looks to have flipped the State House, which I will tell you nobody was expecting, but Trevor, who runs things over there, said he's happy to have the voters prove him wrong. And so just amazing stuff up and down the ballot. I think of these states here, we're still waiting on the Arizona legislature, but also just a sort of honestly surprisingly good, but awesome night. So from the breadth of Tech for Campaigns, we finished the last 2 years, it's 2021, so it includes Virginia, with working with 121 campaigns across 269 projects. Our Turnout program, which actually goes directly to voters to help sign people up to vote early, signed up 60,000 people, hundreds of millions of ad impressions, millions of emails, all of which led to what I just mentioned, those 4 amazing chamber flips and 8+ statewide victories. I can't remember if I included Kerry Lake in those. So kind of what happened from our perspective is that it was a real story of headwinds versus head cases. I'm glad, Jen, you appreciate that, probably knowing in person.
Yes.
So there is turnout high on both sides. I think it's still early. The voter files won't be out until January, but it looks to it wasn't necessarily that Democrats showed up more than Republicans. It was at least in the same zone. And so what that really kind of implies is that independents voted against the extremists, voted against election denialism, voted for reproductive rights protections in many states, including Kentucky. And overall candidate quality, which is the jargon we use for, is this person a great normal person who cares about their community and cares about policy, or are they running on social issues that don't really matter to everyday lives? The second sort of big theme we saw was that governor races actually led to some state-specific differences, or vice versa. So in Pennsylvania and Michigan, seems like the top of the ticket helped legislative Democrats win even more than folks expected, whereas you saw in Florida and New York sort of underperformance for the Democratic candidate in the governor, and some headwinds that were created out of that. A third thing, which we'll go into a little bit, was that honestly we were all a little surprised. Why were we surprised? Well, sort of how does the narrative get set? And when we did our pre-election briefing, Nancy Dunkwitz from Change Research came on, and she gave one warning, which was to watch out for the low quality Republican polls that get wrapped up in the aggregators. So the aggregators being sites like Real Clear Politics or 538, where they're taking a lot of different polls and sort of producing one big number. And she was spot on. So a lot of the sort of higher quality pollsters actually ended up being pretty accurate, but the low quality pollsters really were very off, and that's what kind of threw off the media headlines, especially in the final month of the election. So that's something to keep an eye on for both our candidates and how they feel about the mood and sort of all of us as consumers of media. One particularly awesome thing, a stat that we saw was pretty much everywhere we had statewide, I think for like 100% of state election denying governors were defeated. For our candidates that are running against election deniers in their districts, 80% of them were defeated. And so that's something that we just really are fortunate, I guess, to have that be the statistic, and we did it for the next 2 years. So as we kind of go back to the polling side, the chart on the right shows that the various grades of 538 pollsters. So 538 rates various pollsters for how good a pollster they are. And what really became clear this cycle, as I mentioned, was that the lower grade pollsters had really high error. So that you can see on the right side of the chart, the error goes up. But the thing to keep in mind here is that even though the sort of higher quality nonpartisan pollsters did better in terms of the numbers that they delivered, the broken dynamics of polling still remain. Nothing's actually fundamentally fixed. It's pretty hard to fix it. An accurate poll depends on reaching and talking to voters, and in an era where nobody wants to pick up their phone, reply to text, or sometimes click on things, reaching real voters is just a fundamentally difficult problem. So for all of us, us political practitioners and folks like yourselves who may be volunteers, donors, or supporters, the lesson really is to continue to treat horse race polling and horse race narratives with a big grain of salt, and for campaigns to keep developing alternative data sources like our digital message testing that can help supplant or complement some of the polls. So we will out tomorrow in our newsletter our quick impact report that will go into more detail of a lot of these things, which we're very excited about. And then we'll be updating that over the next couple of months as the voter ballot comes out and we get to do more in-depth analysis from the postmortems that we always do after every election. So I'll touch a little bit on the candidate side and then hand it over to Gina, who runs our Turnout program, to talk about what that team was up to. But like I mentioned, we had 121 campaigns, just awesome feedback from candidates across the board. We had a strong representative slate of candidates. It looks like America that represents sort of additionally women and minorities, but also people who are first-time candidates, where we can provide them with the structure for the digital side of their campaign to get off and running. And one thing that we were delighted to see was that that slate of candidates actually outperformed their peers. So in our first cut at this analysis, in contested 2022 races in the main states that we invested in, about 56% Democrats overperformed expectations in their districts. Expectations meaning how did that district normally vote on a partisan basis throughout elections. Of the TFC candidates in those same chambers, 74% of them outperformed. So I think there's a 14% increase or 14 percentage point increase in how those folks did in their districts, and that's a number that we're delighted to see. The messaging focuses here a lot on, again, being normal, trying to make the point about extremist opponents without, surfacing or giving additional daylight or oxygen to those theories. And I think that's, what's clear or reasonably clear in the electorate is that was what was needed. We also want to make sure that we're educating candidates. So Rep. Matt Clayman, who's a candidate for the Alaska Senate, who's currently ahead by 134 votes in the ranked choice voting process, told us something on his team call that really kind of helped crystallize what we're doing. It's yes, we're delivering the programs and doing the spend and making the ads and trying to get in front of voters, but also trying to leave folks like Jen, Jay, and Matt with a better impression of how digital can work for their campaigns for every cycle to come. We ran 6 cross-campaign message tests, so intervention polling being sort of limited in what it can tell you. We've been working a lot on trying to use our data to be able to tell new stories or to decide new things. So across these 6 tests, we had 12 campaigns here, 14 campaigns here, 10 campaigns here that all participated jointly, each too small to really be able to detect too much, but all participated jointly in being able to detect trends that were working across all of their campaigns. And one thing to note is that often the results were different than what polls said. So, choice ended up, obviously, was a very persuasive and important issue in this election. But it turns out when you were talking about an email or an ad, that's not always people want to click on. You can theorize as to why. Maybe people know what they think about it and don't really want to get more information. Maybe it's just not something they want to have on their phone, like in front of them. It's a sad story. So you see these counterintuitive things that come up that really informed how we were able to execute our programs throughout this year, kind of in real time. And that's something that's very unique to TFC. It's a reflection of the technical infrastructure the team has built over the past 2 years, and something that has a clear blueprint for 2023, 24 to get going. So with that, I will introduce Gina Pack, who is our Turnout program lead for the cycle, talk about what they did on that side of the wall.
Thanks, Greg. So just a reminder for those of you who are hearing about this for the first time, but our digital turnout program for 2022 focused on 5 key swing states: Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. And really the premise or the objective here is to find people who aren't likely to vote that are Democrats, right? So we call those our Goldilocks voters. And the fact that about a third of them didn't even have cell phones in the voter file, which means that they were not getting contacted by anyone in the party, sort of indicated to us that we were on the right track in finding them. We ended up signing a little bit under 60,000 people and did it at about $23 per sign up. So about $5 more than we did in 2020. And about half of them, a little under half of them, ended up being our Goldilocks voter. And we're helping them vote. I think it's become pretty clear in the literature that the earlier you can bank these votes, the better the advantage it is for us. And so we're helping them vote by mail. And then as we got closer and closer to election day, helping them vote in person, dropping off their ballots, or just voting on election day because of whatever reason. I think it showed in terms of our spend and in terms of our share of voice. So you'll see here in this chart, this is sort of the last week leading up to election day. And we were number 6 in terms of our ad spend. And so we were really focusing on making sure voters had all of the information, a couple days out, it's early voting periods are ending, make sure you skip the lines on election day, making sure that you know where your drop box locations are if you're a state that allows that for your ballots, or just making sure you have a voting plan in place to really follow through on the intentions that you might have set weeks earlier about getting ready to go vote and not letting things like your schedule or day-to-day life getting in the way. But I think one of the things that became very clear is that banking those votes as early as possible is not only better from an overall, final vote count perspective, but also from a cost efficacy perspective. If you look at the cost per sign up for us, it doubled between September and October, and it tripled between September and November. Part of this is just everyone starts to get into the race in terms of spending in October and November. And so there's a lot of competition for eyeballs. But ultimately, it's just the fact that you're capturing people who have good intention earlier, getting them started earlier, and you're not compressing a lot of that cycle. Another learning that we had, which was really around our ad creative, you'll see on the next slide, is we tested, Greg, perfect. We tested over 500 concepts across 30 formats in our program, really to try and find the most compelling messages and make it the most compelling way for these younger, more diverse voters to find us. And so we tried things that were, state affiliation based, how it works, issue focus, humor, influencer or creator led content. And ultimately, from a most compelling message, what came through was convenience and. Right. I think we heard a proxy of this when we talk about candidates and issues, where it's not just abortion, it was an abortion and type message. For us, the parallel here in terms of vote by mail or voting early was convenience and, right? Convenience and urgency, convenience and social pressure, convenience and how it works, to really sort of underscore the sort of core value prop, as we call it, around voting by mail. And so that's really the top half of the program. The bottom half of our program is really providing voters support where they are. And shout out to the volunteers who I see on the call who helped us really in that last week and that final push. So thank you. But we're helping mobile voters, people who are on their phones, navigating tech that's really still meant for desktop computers. And so just some examples here. The first one is an example of the Michigan State website for requesting your state ballot. You'll see that text and images are overlapping, they're squished together, they're just really hard to navigate. The second is just finding relevant information. A lot of sites have the same sort of top 3 FAQs everywhere, but it's very hard for voters to maybe find FAQ 4 through 10, right? So where can I go to track my ballot? Can I trust this site? I see that there's another site. Or where can I drop off my ballot? Can I drop it off anywhere in the county? County clerk numbers, not so easy to find. And then the third example is links, right? Links that have very important information that are leading to spreadsheets and PDFs, which if you open them on phones are very tiny to read. So this is an example from the Nevada state site where you're looking for a polling location. You click on Carson City and it'll open a landscape PDF. And so you have to zoom, you have to read. It's very not user-friendly. And so we're just here to make it easy for people to make their voting plan so that it's easy for them to then follow through. And with that, Greg, you might be.
And with that, yeah, thank you, Gina. You're happy with us?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. I just want to introduce you briefly. You're a member of our political advisory board at TSC Canada, I think 2 cycles in a row, from South Carolina, fierce advocate for any gun violence, improving mental health. Somebody where our involvement traces back to, I think, probably 3 years ago now. We had a conversation about how you should architect your digital strategy. So I just want to lead off with a kind of easy question. How did the cycle go for you and for South Carolina, since a lot of the states, we don't necessarily hear about that in the media?
I want to say first to everybody on the Zoom call, welcome y'all here in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm so grateful for the team, Tech for Campaigns, and specifically to those that volunteered and supported my campaign. Big shout out to Shelby. I don't know if she's on this call and the entire team. So thank everybody so much, and I'm just excited to be here and to kind of share some insights with everybody. So I'm looking forward to it. I wore my suit and tie for everybody today. I'm normally
I haven't seen that in a while.
I'm normally a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy, and I just want to thank everybody for everything, and I'm just excited to be here today. Can you repeat the question, because I was trying to put myself up for this.
You were excited. Well, we talk a lot about Michigan and Minnesota and Pennsylvania, the sort of classic states, but we have, the reason we work with folks like yourself is that you can't just say, oh, that place is Republican forever, and you're a sort of witness to what happens when you do that. So just to sort of set the stage for why we invest in districts like yours or states like yourselves, like how did the election go for you and for the state?
Well, for me, and I think thanks in a large part to the wonderful work of the team at Tech for Campaign, we performed really well. Based on percentage-wise from 2020 to 2022, this election, it was a little of a 9-point increase from the last election. But overall, for the state of South Carolina, nationally, we didn't see a red wave, but in South Carolina, we saw a red wave. We lost, I believe, and Nick Satilli, who is the executive director, the House Democratic Caucus, was on the call, and he's texting me now some statistics so I can sound like I'm smart. But from my count, we went from 43 members of the Democratic Caucus to we're going to have somewhere around 36 going into this legislative session. And to your point, A lot of it is, it's just that long-term investment. Really recognizing, and one of the great things and why I was so eager to be involved with Tech for Campaigns is understanding the importance of legislators. And we all know the history of those scary Republicans that were once legislators here in South Carolina. I'm talking about Lindsey Graham. I'm talking about Tim Scott, that 20 years ago, they both were, 30 years ago, they were both in the legislature. And it would have been a lot cheaper and a lot more effective if we would have put some resources behind making sure, especially Lindsey Graham, wasn't in a Senate where it costs millions and millions of dollars just to compete with him. Jamie Harris spent $100 million and it still wasn't enough. So in South Carolina, it was a red wave, and I would have been potentially a victim of that red wave without the strategic kind of digital marketing that we did for Tech for Campaign, along with all the other complementary stuff we did, ground game and that a mail program and radio and other things like that, and door to door. But that digital marketing, I think, was what was the game changer. We had in particular 3 seats that were shocking. The percentages that we lost by. District 12, it was a 50, almost a 53. Biden, we lost at 45.5. District 64 was a 51.9. Biden, we lost at 47.3. 16 was 52.4. Biden, we lost at 45.9. District 122 was a 53.2. We lost at 45.9. So, I mean, it was literally a bloodbath in South Carolina. The governor's race, it was one of the largest victories, unfortunately, for Republicans in over 30 years. I mean, they won almost by 18 points. And so we need to do a lot of work here over the next decade here in South Carolina. And again, that's why Nick Satilli is on the call, because he saw the work that was done with Tech for Campaigns and the sophistication in which we were able to run our campaign that was so important.
Thanks, Brad. What would you think drove some of those results? Do you think people talk in the media about the Black community feeling disconnected, or can't blame redistricting if it was the statewide? So was it enthusiasm? Was it people not talking to folks in the way they need to be talked to? How do you place that?
Well, yeah, here in Charleston and Berkeley County, where I represent, African American turnout was insanely low. We saw that going into early voting. There were, the parts of Charleston County in particular that are a lot less diverse, that were outperforming places like North Charleston and in my district in particular that are, when it comes to voting, predominantly African American. But that was true throughout the state. And quite frankly, we just did not, from a statewide perspective, invest in communicating to African Americans. And in no way, we weren't knocking on their doors. We weren't communicating to them digitally. We weren't putting mail in their mailbox. We weren't calling them. We weren't sending text messages to them. So it was a community that you need long-term investment. Stacey Abrams proved that in Georgia, to communicate with African Americans. So we saw, again, and just to be honest, you talked about some of the stuff that's like a national driver to get people excited about this election, i.e. Women's rights to choose, which is very important in the African American community, but may not resonate as much as some of these meat and potatoes issues, like, how high gas prices are, or, those African American young families that are trying to buy their first home, and because of inflation and other things, won't be able to because of interest rates that are rising. So we weren't communicating to African Americans, and we weren't statewide. Our campaign did, but statewide, we just didn't do a good enough job of doing it. And it's something that, again, that's why Nick Satilli is on this call. I'm gonna keep shouting them out, because I think it's important that moving forward, that we're we're communicating more effectively to the African American community and, quite frankly, a growing Hispanic community here in South Carolina.
Mhm. That unfortunately makes some sense. How do you have hope about the long-term path? It's like we just came out of the cycle for yourself and for the caucus and for the state. How do you keep yourself going? It's a long game is one of the things that we always say.
Yeah.
So how do you gotta keep playing?
Well, I think I've had the privilege of parents. My mom, who was a public school teacher, who's recently retired, and my father, who is deceased, but he was a civil rights leader. And they both of them instilled in me the importance of 80-hour work week, 40 hours to pay the bills and 40 hours to give back to the community. In other words, it's long, it's arduous, it's a lot of hard work. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, but we had some successes here in the state. You know, my reelection, you know, it was a Republican held seat for 3 terms. Spencer Wetmore is a rising star in the Democratic Party and represents a much needed voice, especially here in South Carolina politics. And so excited to have her get reelected. Leon Stavronakis, who had a really tough race that won. So there's some bright spots. There's definitely some bright spots. But I recognize when I got into politics and based on my beliefs as a Democrat, I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. And I'm hopeful. Again, I'm just a shameless plug, probably because the reason why I decided to be on the advisory board is because of organizations like Texas Campaigns that understands the importance of state legislators. I mean, to be honest with you, that's what gives me hope is organizations like this. You know, it's exciting to get involved and to invest in some of these congressional races and gubernatorial races and presidential races, but it's state legislators that affect people's daily lives. And so the work, I mean, I'm excited to, again, you know, the reason why Nick Satilli is on this call is because I'm excited to be able to share some of the stuff that I've learned over the past 2 election cycles with the caucus so we can start moving in the right direction. There's 3 seats in particular that we need to win back and 1 or 2 seats that I think that we can be competitive in. So this is my passionate plea to those of you from Texas Campaigns and those that are supporters of Texas Campaigns, that South Carolina is open for business when it comes to working with Texas Campaigns.
It's this famous Nick guy. I hear a lot about him. All right, if anybody has any questions, drop them in the chat. And then I guess my last question would be for you know, you mentioned sort of the different components of the modern campaign, you know, your ground game, digital, mail. How do you think about the communities that you can reach from different channels for the sort of the techie folks in the audience? What context can you bring for how you run a campaign that was so successful?
You know, I think I understand the question. I'm gonna answer the best of my ability. I think for me, what we saw was and Shelby and the team, again, shout out to y'all, and I'm so grateful for y'all. You know, that Stacker app or Stacker Deck, I might be saying it wrong, but
that was close.
For me, you know, kind of like anecdotally, that over-the-top TV where we were able to smartly use our commercial that we created and target people within zip codes through all the streaming services that they use. I mean, literally the day that we launched, I think I texted Shelby excited because a friend of mine had saw the ad and when he was watching Netflix and was just super excited and shared it, I think 1,000 times with his group of friends. It was just the ability to target people, the list of people in in our list of people that we wanted to communicate with was, it was super impressive. Laura, we got to shout you out for that. Thank you so much for that suggestion. I literally was like, hey, do I spend $65,000 to $75,000 to do traditional TV? And they were like, no, let's just be smart about it. I was excited about going on TV, but it ended up being the right thing to do because the right people that needed to see our message got to see it, and people were excited. I mean, I don't know how many people on election day were able to come that on election day that came up to me and was like, I saw you on TV. This one lady and her like 10-year or 12-year-old daughter walked up to me, and the young lady got so excited. The little girl, 12-year-old girl, got so excited. She thought I was a basketball player, somebody like famous, because she had saw me on TV a couple of days before. So, I took a picture with her, and I said, I'm gonna put it on my Instagram. And she said, "Mommy, I'm gonna be famous." So again, I was just again so impressed with just the creativity of the entire team, and it really took me over the edge. I mean, we went into the election feeling that we had that our district had shifted with redistricting, to be honest with you. But I went into it scared. The Republicans wanted that seat back, quite frankly, because of the work that we've been doing. And it was an unfavorable year for Democrats here in South Carolina, which I don't think any of us was expecting. And so, I mean, literally the edge that I had was we were able to target about 9,000 people, especially with the help of like the digital marketing that we did. And we were able to win by over 13 points. And I cannot thank the team enough for their thoughtfulness and everything. And their Shelby and the whole team taking my calls and text messages late at night. I just thank everybody for it.
That's really fantastic to hear. I hope you run into that girl again.
Yeah. Tell me famous.
We're gonna be famous. I'll let you go in just a minute, but Alan asked a question about Joe Cunningham. I don't know if you saw that. You wanna address that?
How does a candidate like Joe Cunningham? I didn't get to see the whole question.
Go from being a congressperson to sort of not really a relevant Democratic candidate. What has happened to the purple section of the electorate in your mind? Well,
I mean, I think honestly, I'm gonna be candid, and sometimes people don't like me person being straightforward, but I think in Joe's situation, it was kind of what I talked about early in the conversation. It's just I think statewide we didn't do we didn't do a good job of communicating with the African American community. Joe got 40% of the vote. To make up a difference, he needed more engagement with the African American community. And we didn't have that in this election statewide. And that's for a very number of reasons. I think Joe made a fantastic congressperson. Congressman and Annie Andrews would have made a really, really good congresswoman as well. But you have to engage the entire constituency of the Democratic Party. And I think, unfortunately, this election cycle, there were some opportunities for all of us to do more. And I think we will. I'm hoping that this won't be the last that we hear Joe Cunningham. He was, like I said, again, a phenomenal congressman. He's a really good guy. I'm excited for whatever he decides to do next. He has my full support for whatever he decides to do next. But we need to build infrastructure here in South Carolina to galvanize the African American community and the growing Hispanic community. That's the way we win, and that's what we did in our campaign. And I'm hoping, again, one last shout out to Nick Satilli. We got Nick Satilli on the call. It's important that we make sure that we're engaging the entire population.
That is right. Like long-term infrastructure building is something we talk a lot about here, and in 2018, 2019, it sounded more conceptual, but I think what we're seeing is this year some of that work paying off, and hopefully in South Carolina it'll start to pay off as we continue that work. So thank you, Rob, for joining.
Thank y'all. I have to head to an event, so I'm a sign off now, guys. I love y'all so much. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with y'all. And Nick Tilly, hopefully he'll drop his email in the chat room so y'all can get his information, and we can elect more Democrats, because we're going to need help here in South Carolina. I love you guys. Good night.
Thank you, Rob, so much. With that, I'm excited to introduce Laura Oppenheimer, is one of our state directors who worked with candidates in Michigan to zoom into a different, kind of provide that point of contrast.
Yeah, absolutely. I am super excited to be introducing Representative-elect Jen Hill tonight. You can read her bio right here, but she was recently, last week, elected to Michigan State House of Representatives, representing the 109th district, a district that was named by multiple sources as one of the most important ones for Democrats in the state to defend if there was any chance of Democrats taking the majority, which they did. So it's going to be a celebratory conversation tonight. Instead of sort of reading a bunch of boilerplate bio, I thought we would just jump into it, Representative-elect. So maybe to start, can you give us a little bit of a rundown of your race and your district? So, and maybe a little bit about who you are as well, for those who haven't worked on your campaign.
Sure. So we got to do the Michigan. So here's Michigan, folks, right? Detroit is over here, down here. I'm up here. I'm on the shores of Lake Superior in the far north. I've got about 6 inches of snow on the ground right now outside my house, and in Marquette, Michigan. The District 109 is the 4 counties of the Central UP. It measures 160 miles by 125 miles. I'm in 2 time zones in my district, Central time zone and Eastern time zone. But we have, and it's 90,000 people approximately in each House district in Michigan. I am the 3rd generation to fish in the UP and the first lucky enough to live here. So born in Illinois, raised in Indiana. I've lived in New York, Massachusetts, Washington State, California before I came to Michigan. So I am the solid Gen X of my time, and my connection. This is about change, and in particular, I am passionate about climate change. And Marquette had 2 coal-fired power plants when I was first elected to the Marquette City Commission in 2018. And they have both now been torn down, not just shut down, but torn down. And so we are in the midst of a massive change in our energy system. And the Great Lakes, we understand that we're going to be a refuge for climate change refugees as the many things are hitting other parts of the country. And one of the things I ran on is that no one would be left behind, that we are ready for the big changes coming at us. And if I can we're just on a techie note, one of the stories I tell is I have an iPhone, and the first iPhone came out in 2007, 15 years ago. Now, Ford and General Motors, backbone of the Michigan economy, the companies that built the middle class in America, the auto companies, they have announced that in 15 years, they're going to stop selling gasoline-powered cars. So 15 years ago, none of these existed. 15 years from now, we're not going to have gas-powered cars. And I say, I didn't ask for this. I asked for a jetpack. But instead, we have these things in our pockets, all of us. And that moment of helping people understand that the changes that we're going through are not ideological, and it's not because of Al Gore, and it's not because of Joe Biden, it's because of tech and how that tech is changing. And making folks laugh about the jetpack, and then saying, okay, now how are we going to be prepared for what comes next? That was my race. That, and of course, the taking away of women's rights, which was absolutely fundamental. I was the MC of all 4 of our women's marches from 2017 to 2020, and deeply involved in the demonstrations that we had against the Dobbs leak. Initially, we had 4 days of demonstrations against the Dobbs leak back at the beginning in May or June, in a city of 20,000 people.
Wow. It was a big night, and I would say week in Michigan with from the top of the ticket and all the way down. Talk to me a little bit about what factors you see as being in play and flipping the House, and if you can speak to it and flipping the Senate as well.
Yeah, so again, long game. In 2016 saw the election of Donald Trump. 2018, Michigan has in our Constitution the ability for citizens to make ballot initiatives if you gather enough signatures. To get an initiative on the ballot, Michigan has 10 million people. And to get a ballot initiative up, you have to have minimum of 255,000 signatures. To put the, and we have a law from 1931 that bans abortions in all cases, no exceptions. Governor Whitmer filed a legal injunction to put that in a stay legal position while things played out at when Dobbs was finally fully released. And then even before that happened, folks gathered not just 254,000 signatures, but 750,000 signatures were gathered across Michigan to put a ballot initiative on that Prop 3 that said that we would allow, basically the message, the fundamental message was to restore Roe. And so we had that on the ticket, as well as our top 3 statewide candidates were all election deniers or worse. And including one, our attorney general candidate actually had gone to January 6th. And then in my race in the Upper Peninsula, the Republicans really were gunning to have the Upper Peninsula, so remember Michigan looks like this, so the 15 counties of the Upper Peninsula turn red. And that I was, quote, too liberal, too woke, too extreme to possibly fairly represent this district. But running on, as Governor Whitmer says, fix the damn roads, and the high electric rates that we pay here, the energy transition that we're going through, and the great mental health crisis that we are having in rural America. We have highest rates of suicide of many communities, and we have a huge meth and opioid problem. So on those issues, we were able to bring out more people that had voted before, and galvanized a lot of voters on the proposition issues.
One of the things we talked about, I think, in our wrap-up call with you was that, talking about reproductive rights was very powerful and personal for you. And you were hoping that you never have to talk about it again because
Yes.
Prop 3 passed. Do you see in maybe, and I don't want to put you on the spot about sort of talking about what's going on in other states, but do you see reproductive freedom or reproductive rights being an issue in Michigan in the future? Or do you feel like it's sort of a done deal? And how do you see it potentially affecting 2024? Question in from the audience.
So we found that, so it turned out there was a loophole in the Michigan law, and the Catholic churches in Michigan were putting up signs in the churchyard that said Prop 3, too confusing, too extreme, in the churchyards. Because technically a proposition is whatever, not political, whatever, like infuriating people. So, but at the same time, I've seen preliminary data that shows that Catholic women showed up and voted for Prop 3, voted in favor of maintaining their rights. So if you put it on the ballot in the affirmative, yes, I'm voting to protect rights, that's that crosses many lines. Is my understanding that the one debrief that I've been part of so far, that is the analysis and takeaway that we have. And that, that signature gathering process of the ballot initiative, of course, then creates that infrastructure behind which we could my campaign manager for the general election she was the lead organizer for our reproductive freedom ballot initiative so direct tie-in for me. And so it is galvanizing. And then we had, there were 500 students in line to vote at the University of Michigan at 8:00 p.m. when our polls closed, and every one of those people voted.
Awesome.
It brought people out. Yeah.
In terms of sort of your working with TFC, can you talk a little bit about sort of how TFC supported your race?
Yes,
and this is not me planting to hear great things about myself. So hopefully,
and Laura was a key part of the team. And thank you to Ravij, Carl, Danielle, who were essential. My struggle was, I've been a city commissioner. I've never run a state representative race before, nor had my campaign manager, and my treasurer actually threatened to quit in September because we got tied up with a daily cost campaign, and I was literally getting 1,000 donations a day of $1 to $5, which was both amazing and wonderful and completely overwhelming within the horrible way you report finances in Michigan. So Tech for Campaigns came in and ramped up and made it possible for me to do the fundraising I had never done in 9 months of campaigning, that hit my personal network, because I had this, I've had my Apple contact list and my Gmail contact list and my professional contact list from Outlook from 15 years ago, and folks took that information, created segments for me, and were able to get the fundraising out there at the end that helped. Unfortunately, I think this is terrible, but we spent $1 million on my race between the Republicans and Democrats. Just $1 million, just on mail and digital and video and all that. And so every penny counted, and I'm really grateful for their support to reach my personal contacts, which of course is the first thing you're supposed to do. And we hit them there at the end, and we had really good results.
We have, I think, a minute left. Maybe since we now have a super majority in Michigan, tell me a little bit about what the legislative sort of priorities are as you think about sort of your first term.
We are we're going to, Michigan, the foundation of the middle class, first unions came out of Flint, UAW. Restoring the right to work is the absolute first priority for all of us. Getting rid of that 1931 law is essential. And the priority of, we have a pension tax that was put on after the 2009, that senior population. And the Republicans, we've had Democratic governor, Republican legislature, and they would just stop everything. They in fact only met 2 days between July 1st and the election. The Republicans just refused to have session. They just didn't do anything. We have $6 billion sitting in Lansing that now, with the supermajority, we are going to get into communities and people's hands. Really excited. So thank you very much, all of you, for all you do. Absolutely essential to have that, especially as Rep. Moore said, that digital game, man. I just, one last story. I went to gas up my car because I live 6.5-hour drive from our state capital. So I have to leave tomorrow to get to a meeting that starts at Thursday at 8 a.m. So I pull into the gas station, and we actually, I live in a small town. They actually have a guy who comes and pumps your gas and cleans your windshield. So, which hasn't, they don't do that anymore, but it was a wonderful moment. And he looks me straight in the eye. I don't know this guy. And he looks at me straight in the eye and he says, "Well, did you win?" And this is the day after the election. "Did you win?" Recognized who I was, knew the stakes at hand. And I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "Good, we don't need any more Republicans." So
there you
this
go.
was the guy at the gas station. So yeah, it was a great day for Michigan, and looking forward to what we can do and show what's possible when you take away the gerrymandering, which was critical, the critical step of having an independent redistricting commission to take away that gerrymandering. The Democrats' votes had always been there, but now they're truly representative.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Representative-elect. I'm so excited to see what you do in Lansing. And I think with that, I'll pass it over to Lauren.
Great, thanks. Hey, everybody. I'm Lauren, head of marketing here, and I have a really fun couple slides to present. When J.A. Moore, Rep. Moore said, it's an 80-hour work week, right? 40 to pay the bills and 40 to give back to your community. I thought that's what you all are doing, and that's what you all have been doing, many of you, since 2018. So I wanted to, obviously far too many names to call out here, but just a major shout out to all of you who have hit major milestones, who keep coming back project after project, who maybe you signed up in 2018 and you just come back every cycle. Maybe you signed up this year and you did a whole string of projects because you just wanted to have impact. You wanted to put those sort of 40 hours back into the community and see results. And we did, in large part because of all the work that you did this cycle and all the work that you've done with us since 2017, 2018. So what you see here is people who've hit their kind of 5th project and then 6th to 20th. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Lauren Wood. I don't know if she's on the call, but she rises to the top in terms of the volunteer who has worked on the highest number of projects. She joined in 2018 and hit her 24th project this cycle. I think she did 3 this cycle, pretty much back to back. And State Director Jamie Ruth has a really nice message for her here, that every candidate has a unique voice, every campaign brings unique challenges to the TFC team, but Lauren's here for it. She listens to her clients' needs, works hard to earn their trust, and delivers professional content her campaigns are proud of. So a huge congrats, Lauren, and to all of you for your incredible work this cycle and before that, before this year as well. The next slide, just continuing the celebratory milestones and just thanks. So we also had a number of volunteers who volunteered on kind of special projects and also really took an active role with fundraising events this year. Debbie, Katie, and Riva were all co-hosts for virtual fundraising events this year. Caro jumped in and helped us with one of our digital campaigns. All of them wrote emails on our behalf. So huge thanks to you all. That absolutely helped our fundraising efforts. And I think for people to understand that you can be a volunteer and a donor, that you're all in, as Debbie said once, is super important. And then we also had a lot of media opportunities. So Emily, Carl, Katie, Rachel, Sonal, and Akaro also participated in interviews with NBC and Axios. So grateful for that. And then we had, as some of you may remember, I think one of our more popular parts of an all hands earlier this year was our growth marketing panel with Riva and Kyle. So they willingly jumped in and prepared for that and answered a lot of questions. And that was, or at least for me, one of my favorite parts of our meetings this year. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I think with that, we'll go to our final slide. What's next? So you think we're done, right? We're done for the year, but we actually have Virginia and New Jersey heading to the polls in 2023. And I checked earlier today and we actually already have a project up there for Virginia, and that will just continue to get activated. So keep an eye on open projects. We internally are working on our, sorry, what was that?
Is that for the special election coming up?
Greg, you want to give some color there?
It's for the no, it is not. It's for the caucus leader.
The what?
Who's running? It's a website for the leader of the Virginia Democrats, so they get their sort of stuff in early, as that's a major source of funding throughout the year.
Okay, got it. The reason I was asking was that there's a Senate special election for January 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry.
Yeah. We'll be talking to them next week.
Okay, can I join you guys for that? Or?
Yeah, it'll be on the website if anything comes of it.
Okay, got it.
Cool.
If we win that Senate race, it's gonna make things a lot easier for us.
Noted. That'd be great. Lauren, you want to take it away?
Yeah, let me just wrap this up. So we're working on our 2020 impact report, which we're publishing tonight. So you'll see an email about that tomorrow. And then are already heads down getting our 2022 digital ads and messaging reports organized. So you'll see those kind of early Q1 of next year. If you don't already, please follow us on social and encourage your friends to join the fun. I think with that, we will wrap up. Just thanks again. Congratulations again. Hope you all have a really wonderful holiday season and that we see you in the new year. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Talk to you later.